Hello and thanks for joining us. I am Vinmartin, Obiora Ilo, and this is the Signature Show. Today on the program, we'll be focusing on that famous letter writer, former President Olusegun Obasanjo. Well, he has come out with another letter raising a lot of issues about the leadership of President Buhari and the APC. That letter has also raised a lot of reactions from the APC, from PDP, from different individuals, from so many people that may not have commented about anything in Nigeria. Everyone is commenting. We're focusing on our program today on that letter by former President Olusegun Obasanjo. We have a guest to look at what will happen next after all this noise about the letter. What happens next in the political space? Today also, we have a special interview with FESTUS KEYAMO, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. FESTUS will be talking about restructuring, the famous third force that Olusegun Obasanjo talked about in his letter, and of course, he will be talking about corruption, how it has been handled under President Muhammadu Buhari. We also hit the streets to ask the ordinary Nigerian what they are thinking about this famous letter from President Olusegun Obasanjo. And so many other things on our show today. So don't go away. Just stay tuned and let's share this quality 1 hour together.
When the time comes for me to vote, I will consider the track record of all the candidates that are contesting. And I will assess, and based on my assessment for who I believe have the best of track record to perform the job of Nigerian president, then you will have my vote. And if anybody should know what the job of Nigerian president requires, I should know. And there's no sentiment in the affairs of Nigeria. And you ask me if I love Nigeria. So you love Nigeria. And you love Nigeria, you don't see beyond your nose. What nonsense. Look, Nigeria is a population of 180 million. And you won't have anybody other than one person or two persons that can run the affairs of Nigeria. What the hell are you talking about? For me, there are millions who can run the affairs of Nigeria who are not even coming out. Millions. So why should you die on behalf of one who is probably performing as a mediocre? With all due respect, Nigeria, if you love it, you will look for the best for Nigeria. And I don't believe that at this point in time we have the best for Nigeria.
Yeah, just before we bring in our guest, let's serve you a special report on the history of Olusegun Obasanjo's letter writing.
Former President Olusegun Obasanjo has unarguably been described as a colossus, an enigma, and political serial letter writer. But many agree that the vintage OBJ says it when it matters most. Since his recent open letter entitled The Way Out, a clarion call for Nigeria movement, the public space has been awash with reactions, many in support of the write-up and some others against it. Former President Obasanjo's public condemnation of presidents or heads of state in Nigeria did not start today. Some even believe that such criticisms and condemnations often signal the beginning of the end of such administrations. The first victim of Chief Obasanjo's public attack was Alhaji Shehu Shagari, who was president from 1st October 1979 to December 31st, 1983. Obasanjo publicly criticized him for poor management of the economy, which he said has subjected millions of Nigerians to hardship, as well as corruption. Obasanjo equally went after the military president, General Ibrahim Babangida, who then introduced the Structural Adjustment Program, SAP, which escalated the suffering of the people, especially the poor. Even the dreaded General Sani Abacha was not spared by this prolific letter writer. In a keynote address at the Arewa House in Kaduna, Obasanjo took the Abacha regime to the cleaners, calling it a visionless regime. This, however, did not go down well with the Abacha government, as the regime implicated Chief Obasanjo in a phantom coup attempt, set up a military panel which found Obasanjo guilty and sent him to prison. Obasanjo was released by General Abdulsalami Abubakar and later emerged president of Nigeria in 1999. Obasanjo was succeeded by Alhaji Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, who he was alleged to have single-handedly picked to succeed him. The romance between Yar'Adua and Obasanjo collapsed soon after, following Obasanjo's dissatisfaction with Yar'Adua's administration. To express his displeasure, Obasanjo wrote Yar'Adua early in his administration with a view to making him scale up his performance. When Yar'Adua died in 2010, Jonathan was inaugurated as president. But within the first 2 years of Jonathan's administration, Obasanjo became uncomfortable with him. This was concealed from Nigerians until Obasanjo went public in a letter to Jonathan on December 2nd, 2013, entitled "Before It Is Too Late." In apparent annoyance, Chief Obasanjo dumped the PDP, on which platform he led Nigeria for 8 years, and even tore his membership card of the party publicly and resigned from active politics. After 2 years into the Buhari administration, Obasanjo is at it again, this time with a 13-page public letter. In it, he again carpeted the Buhari government, urging him not to run for the 2019 presidential election. He blamed President Buhari for the poor handling of the herdsmen crisis in Nigeria, of poor performance in government, poverty, insecurity, poor economic management, and gross dereliction of duty. Others are condemnation of misdeed or its outright encouragement, nepotism, lack of progress, and hope for the future. Chief Obasanjo thereafter called for a third force and active citizenship participation in politics to wrestle power from the ruling APC and the main opposition, PDP. The question today is, after the Obasanjo letter, what next?
Well, joining me now is Mr. Ray MORPHY. Mr. MORPHY is an APC stalwart, but it might interest you to know that MORPHY had been in the PDP, had also run elections in the APP, was one time in APGA, and now is a member of the APC. So who is better than him to, analyze what is happening in the country today? Mr. MORPHY, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Well, it's no longer news that President Obasanjo has written President Buhari.
Yes.
And the crux of that letter
Yes.
was, look, your time is up. You have not delivered on your promises. You need to go. In his words,
Yeah.
you need to step aside and, join those of us that already retired.
Yes.
But this message, this letter has raised a lot of arguments.
Yes.
But let me start with one of the issues.
Yes.
A lot of people have an issue
Yes.
with the messenger
Yeah.
and not the message.
Okay, let me start by saying that in communication, Marshall McLuhan spoke about the medium being the message. That when you communicate, the medium affects the message. That there's no message without a medium. That's a given. That's psychology. That's why sometimes you realize that the person who gives a message is often more important than the message. Having said that, because that's a fact of psychology, having said that, we must also bear in mind that in a democracy, you have what we call a marketplace of ideas. A sitting president cannot be supported by everybody, by everyone. That's why we say that the majority of the votes cast. If you remember these last elections, there were several millions of people who didn't vote for Mr. President. That's democracy. What you need is a majority. And let's get it very clear that the former president has a right to his views, having been a president, has a right to his views, having been an old man, an elder statesman. This is democracy. Has a right to say to the sitting president, I don't think you're doing well enough. The sitting president also has a right to either listen to him or ignore him. The fact remains that we must develop the democratic mindset. Obasanjo, former President Obasanjo, is completely within his rights to take an X-ray of developments in the countries, giving his own experience, and say, look, Mr. President, sir, you're not doing well enough. And that's how it works. That's democracy.
Okay, so how about the message? Why are people wasting too much time on the messenger?
Yes.
Is there something to take away from this letter for all of us?
Undoubtedly. But let me go into the background of people taking on the messenger. Unfortunately, we have developed a sycophantic culture where we see what is white, and because Vin here is a benefactor, people now say that what is white is suddenly black. That is the culture that's evolving in our politics. But you see, the reason for this evolution is because too many people depend on government for their income. So they keep trying to satisfy that income so that they ensure it flows. That's a given. Now, if there are truths, there are basic truths. Mr. Obasanjo has been president. Chief Obasanjo has been president before. He understands the presidency. And there is, without doubt, because this is democracy, a lot of persons who are not satisfied with the performance of the current president. There are also a lot of persons who are also satisfied with his performance. So in a democratic setting, they say, you know, you have a right to your opinion, but the important thing is that democracy means that the majority has its way. Minority can have their what? Say. So Mr. President, whether he's in majority or minority at this point in time, depends on an election in 2019. So he has a right to his say without abusing anyone. People have a right to react to what he has said without abusing anyone as well. So, but certainly from the point of view of Obasanjo, from the point of view of the many things he pointed out, without equivocating it, there are issues of concern at this point in time.
Okay, some people quarrel with what they call the insincerity of Obasanjo, and this is predicated on some things a couple of people have remembered now, that look, this was a man who wanted to have a third term against the constitution of the Federal Republic. What moral right does he have to now say that this man must go after serving one term?
I will look at it in two ways. There's a given that Obasanjo tried to have a third term. I was a columnist at the time. I was involved on the media side of fighting that third term. There's no doubt about it. Anybody who tells that Obasanjo didn't want to have a third term, that's not true. He wanted it. He worked for it. He bribed people to get it. It didn't work. Nigerians stopped him. And remember the role AIT played in stopping him. We were all there. That's a given. So he did that. But the fact remains that every sinner has a right to repentance. Every sinner can repent and say, I was that way, but now I am this way. At the time I was doing this, this was my viewpoint. This was my level of awareness. Right now, I have moved from that perspective. This is where I am. I am now so many years later, I can say I have reached a point where I realize that all those things are not good enough. What remains today is Nigeria. And that he has a right. But let me remind you that I said also that General Buhari, President Buhari, has a constitutional two-term limit. Constitutional two-term limit. And so long as he has that constitutional two-term limit, nobody, not because he's General Buhari, every Nigerian is only barred from being in a executive position for 2 terms. Are you following me? So there's no way General Obasanjo's comments will mean a bar. Simply means his own opinion. And let me remind you that General Obasanjo has been active in Nigerian politics for a long time. For a very long time. From his days as military head of state, he's been active. And he's practically appointed himself an umpire. That is why he has a history of writing these letters. He has appointed himself such. And let me be very honest to you. Nigerians, if you look at, we are media people, if you look at public opinion, a lot of people may not exactly understand why things are the way they are. There may be a lot of reasons why they are the way they are, but things are not good for the average citizen. So it is a matter of explaining the circumstances. Obasanjo now come and say the reason why things are not the way they are is because Mr. President as a person is not doing well enough. That's his own reason. It's up to us. It's up to the villa. It's up to the presidency to say, look, these are the reasons. And Lai Mohammed tried to do that. That's the point. Like I started by saying, democracy is a marketplace of ideas.
But when Lai Mohammed says something like, oh, Mr. Obasanjo has been so busy to notice what we are doing well. I mean, if you're doing well, everybody should know you're doing well.
I will answer you. You cannot hold Mr. President responsible for that kind of response. The simple truth of the matter is that that part of that response is inappropriate.
Okay, that's straight. Okay, you know, so much has been said about this letter. So let's leave the letter now and move on.
Yes.
Now that this letter has been written, what next? Mr. Obasanjo talks about a political realignment, a re-energized citizen participation.
Yes. Let me conjecture this from a holistic perspective. The first fact is that majority of Nigerians are educated now. The young people are educated. Second fact is that social media has enabled them to be direct participants in national news. They know what's going on everywhere. So there's an increased consciousness. So citizen participation has been enabled by the fact that we have phones in our hands with which we can access anything. That's a given. The second aspect of it is that nobody in power can afford to take the citizen for granted anymore. That's a given. You see, I want you to take note of what I'm going to say to you now. In Jos recently, I know Jos pretty well. Around NNPC Jos near Secretariat Junction, some young boys make a living from selling black market petrol close by NNPC mega filling station. Obviously, they don't manufacture that petrol. Obviously, they get it from that same mega filling station. And they sell by that filling station. Most of us in Jos, that's why we buy diesel. My business in Jos buys diesel from that filling station. A few days ago, Civil Defense went to stop them from selling that petrol. The photographs are on the internet. The boys doused themselves with petrol, poured petrol on themselves, and say, we are ready to die here. You can't stop us. Come near here, he would put a match and hug you. That's the level of citizen aggression and anomie. It is a very dangerous time to get young people to a point where they have nothing to lose.
Well, we'll continue with our discussion on the Obasanjo letter, what next? But let's go to the streets and see what Nigerians are saying about this famous letter.
It's a very good letter at the right time. It's a good advice. So what he wrote is what is really happening in the country, and he has spoke the mind of many Nigerians about this government.
The Obasanjo has really dealt well. He really dealt well with the letter. Yeah, he highlighted some silent points. I believe the presidency should look into.
Buhari just need to do. He need to really just understand the letter, understand his age, see that Nigeria is not the country that his age can handle anymore. We need the youth. This is the time that the youth need to come up.
That advice is a very good and calm advice for President Buhari. You know his age, his health. This man, Obasanjo did not condemn his administration into two, but he commended him in some areas and gave him advice as a friend and as a colleague.
It's just that it's coming from the former president. Apart from that, everything in the letter is evident for everyone to see. We can feel it. We are Nigerians, we can feel it. It's not something that nobody tells you that you are hungry. You feel the hunger in you. Nobody tells you that. We can feel it. We are Nigerians. So Obasanjo, with due respect, is an institution. So I believe from the press release that he made or he did, maybe the authorities will begin to take what we are feeling, that's the ordinary citizens, what we feel, serious.
An elder statesman in Nigeria, and he sees more than every one of us. Obasanjo knows what is good for this country. It has been a former president, a former head of state, and he knows a lot about Nigeria. Everybody is suffering in this country. So we are advising Mr. President to step down and allow people, the young people, to rule us.
The letter of former President Obasanjo is truly saying something, but the question is, Obasanjo told us the first Yaradua that Yaradua would do it. We couldn't say anything. It was sickness and sickness and sickness. Now again, he said Jonathan, you can see the way things were then. Now he said Buhari. It's the same person again. That Buhari is not good again. Then which one is which? Where do we go?
Let's look at the political parties and the political players.
Yes.
Is it likely that we see a coming together of parties? Of course, we've seen some, forgive me, but not very important parties saying that they are coalescing, coming together to form a stronger force. Are we looking at a situation where probably the more serious parties like the PDP, APGA, and the others are going to come together to provide that third force? Or is there going to be a brand new arrangement that produces this third force?
Let me put it very simply. In studies of statecrafts and countries, what unites a people is a common enemy at all points in time. The greatest incentive to unity is a common enemy. Jonathan was branded as a common enemy in his time, and he indeed was a common enemy. That's a fact. That is what created the framework and brought people together to oust him democratically.
Under APC.
Democratically.
Yeah.
Today, a lot of people think that having had that experience with Jonathan and looking at the things the way they are, a lot of people are thinking that that is possible. What I can tell you is that there are certain thresholds that if you cross them, you become a public enemy, even if you're a president. We saw it with Jonathan. So what I cannot say to you is whether it's going to be a coalition of small parties or personalities. Because what drives Nigerian politics is not parties, not ideology. Nigerian politics is driven by persons. So once those personalities get together, and you remember that this is an elite fight for power, the populace are merely participants by compulsion and by circumstance.
Can there be lessons to be learned? I mean, is it possible? I mean, studying those in government and the psychology of the APC. Is it possible that the APC could say, okay, let's dissect this message. Let's see what is wrong, and let's now build a new a new administration, a new strategy for governance from this, and probably save the president and save the party.
That is why, for me, the public opinion is the main raw material of governance. For me, what Obasanjo has done is a rude wake-up call. And I assume that any persons who set out to do good, who in doing good are misunderstood, will look at their methods. Because the president apparently set out to do good. But maybe the good he's doing is not being communicated effectively. And some of the issues that Obasanjo raised about not understanding the internal dynamics of the diversity of our country. Some of those things I hope they'll be addressed. And let me say this to you, sir. We have the presidential elections is in February 2019. It will be in February 2019. We have quite about a year.
Yeah, more than a year.
For this message to help us. I'm in APC. I believe that this country needs to be rejigged. I believe and I know that the corruption was too much. I believe and I know that any system where you have recurrent expenditure so high, that recurrent expenditure is being used to service the elite. That's the truth. And I believe and I believed that our government, the APC government, would look at those things and ensure that more money goes to capital, because capital is for tomorrow. Recurrent is for today. So we have an exploding youth population that are hopeless. So that is what certain people are taking advantage of. So I believe that what is happening today, why some people think that Obasanjo didn't do us a favor. I'm one of those who believe Obasanjo did us a favor. Because it is your father, your own, we have parents, even if they're late or alive. Your father will call you and say, my son, what you're doing is not good. Change it. Your brother will call you and say, what you're doing is not good. It's not your enemy. Your enemy will see you go into a pit. What does it do?
And allow you fry your own stew.
Yes. So I think Obasanjo did Nigeria a favor, did APC a favor. It is for us to analyze, and that's my view. It is not something to hide about. It's not something to be shy about. Nobody is perfect. A man sets out to do good. And sometimes, either by way of communication, doesn't communicate it too well, or people are not seeing it well. When we were in school, they say...
People around him are not getting the message to where they should go.
I am one of those who don't buy this concept of people around a leader. A leader chooses his people. If his people are not doing what he wants to do, he sends them away.
So what you're saying is that the buck stops at the table.
We didn't elect anybody else. Nigerians elected the president. And the president was elected on a mandate of certain things. That is what a manifesto is. A manifesto is a mandate, is a contract. So, I can go into a few other things about this matter. I'll give an example. I said to some people, look at the APC manifesto. Everything you see in that APC manifesto is the mandate of the election, which you gave to APC. Anything outside that mandate is not a mandate of the election. And I am one of those, I am running an election under APC in Cross River State. We are building APC in Cross River State. And I tell people that a platform is as good as the ideology behind it. But every ideology is as good as the implementation. So Obasanjo's letter, for me, is an improvement. It will make APC improve. And I thank him for that. And I'm not one of those who are going to insult him, even though he may be worthy as an elder of some kind of, why they do like this now? But I won't insult him.
Ray Murphy, I must thank you.
Oh,
the
wonderful.
letter is a wake-up call.
Yes.
Not just for the APC.
Yes, the country.
Not just for the PDP. Not just for the opposition. But it's a wake-up call for all of us.
That's correct.
Because someone said to me that why are we all so excited about what Obasanjo has said?
Yeah.
Is it not what you hear when you're in the bus,
Yes.
at the airport,
Yes.
at the
Your
beer
house,
parlor,
your
and
house.
everywhere?
Yes.
So it's a wake-up call for all of us. I must thank you for coming on the show, Ray Murphy. We'll take our break, and when we return, we'll serve you the special interview we had with FESTUS KEYAMO San. Some people say you have become, forgive me, an apologist, or you was a very strong supporter of whatever Buhari.
I'm a comparative supporter.
And that's not the FESTUS KEYAMO they've known all these years.
Let me express my thoughts very clearly here today to you, and for those who care to listen. We find ourselves in a situation where we have two contending forces for power in Nigeria now. There's no third force anywhere. I mean, I'm talking about practically. We're talking about the old guard coming, from the old regime, the PDP. And then we have the APC led by President Buhari, who is the leader of the party and the president of the party. We fought so hard for 16 years, and I'm sure you know that I put my blood and my sweat, and so many activists, even civil society and opposition at that time, into dethroning the PDP. We wanted good governance. We wanted to move away from that era of profligacy, that era of waste, that era of all of that. We wanted to move away from that. All Nigerians put hands on deck. Now, it will be extremely stupid of me, after all those years of toil, to now play back into the hands of those same people we fought for 16 years, to play right back into our hands just 2 years after they've left power, by mounting opposition to also unseat the Buhari regime.
Even when they're doing things wrong?
No. I'll tell you this. I'm coming to that. To unseat, because the purpose of stringent opposition at times to call for change. So the kind of opposition we are giving to the government now is a kind of opposition for them to improve. The reason is that we don't want to play into the hand, because between you and me, once this order changes now, what we have is back to where we are coming from. I wish there was a third force, Vin. I wish we have the likes of a Macron, a young, bright person with popular followership everywhere, coming from a third force to unseat these old guards we have in both APC and PDP. I wish we had it. We have it. We don't have it. We don't have it. We do. Practically, yes, practically we don't have it. Practically, I'm being honest, practically we don't have it. So what we need to do now, at the same time as we put pressure on this present regime to improve and watch them and give them enough time, just like we gave PDP enough time to improve, we cannot play back into the hands of the PDP. So what we have is what they call comparative support, not absolute support, comparative. Well, compared to what we have before, that's what I describe as comparative support. Compared to what we have before. So nobody will think we goad me. And in fact, that is even the problem civil society is facing. You can see that most civil society, they are a bit also cautious with the Buhari's regime. Because civil society also understands that any groundswell of opposition, they are not seizing power. It's what the mistake we all made before 1999. We don't want to make that mistake again. Where we mounted opposition against the military, we bonfires, strikes, protests, only to fall right into the hands, because we were not ready for power of the civil society, rights activists, they were not ready for power. They did not form themselves into a power block. They only formed themselves into some protest blocks. They were not formed into some power block to grab power when the military left. And what happened? Once the military left, the bad boys, in quotes, I use it advisedly. I mean, people who were core politicians, who were not also pro-democracy activists, they just walked in and grabbed the spoils. This is the same thing also that we are seeing. Apart from the leadership of the party, which is perhaps the president and Osinbajo and one or two other top hierarchy of the party, you can see that everybody coming behind the APC, they were perhaps in PDP before too. They're a mixture of PDP and those who have been in the APP and the old guard and all of that. So what we have is, like I said, comparative support, because you have a leadership that's always been the head of the APC, the president, and of course the vice president, and a few of the leaders of the party that have always been the opposition. They have always all their lives been in opposition from 1999. They never went to the ruling party. So those are the people you must give some chance to improve. Whilst of course criticizing them where they need to criticize them, I just told you that the continued detention of Dazuki is indefensible. What is that? Is that praise?
Okay.
No, hold on. Is that praise? I just told you that the continued detention of Dazuki is indefensible. But I will not seek to pull down the house that I actively participated in building just a few months or 2 years into their establishment. I do not need anything from government.
They need more time.
They need more time, but they need constructive and constant pressure and criticisms to improve. But we will not seek for change now, because if we seek for change now, we are playing right back into the time and period of Dazuki Gate. We will not want it for now.
Okay, the anti-corruption war. Do you think that Buhari and the APC have done well?
They have not won the war. They have only...
Are they fighting to win?
They are fighting to win, but they have not won the war. The reason is that corruption is so endemic in the system that I bet you few years, few arrests here and there will not wipe out corruption. Few prosecutions here and there will not wipe out corruption. The only thing they have succeeded in doing is to bring it back to the front burner. We're talking about it now. You're talking about it. You're asking me about it. So corruption is back on the front burner. It was not so under Jonathan's regime. It was not on the front burner. It took a back seat because then stealing was not corruption. That was a popular phrase we heard then. So what we are doing now is that we are talking about it. And apart from talking about it, there has been more massive recoveries of stolen funds than we ever witnessed since 1999. Direct stealing from the coffers of government. It is only in Nigeria again that you see a house worth 37 billion naira in Banana Island that the federal government confiscates in an interim procedure, advertises for anybody to come out and claim, we have seized the interim, come out and claim if you are the owner, and nobody comes out.
Only in
37, only in Nigeria, and only under this regime. Tell me under what regime did it happen again? That's to tell you the painstaking effort that the present leadership of the EFC and this particular government has undergone to recover stolen funds. This strategy has always been recover, deprive them from spending the stolen funds.
Most Nigerians are saying that the recovery is good, but they're just scratching the surface. That the real capsule, the cancerous cell of corruption, are the things that government and leadership, not just the Buhari of today, has not done. For instance, our pension policy in the country, treatment of civil servants, gratuities. I don't think that there is a good pay for a day's work in Nigeria. And that's the beginning point, especially in the public service. I think it is extremely disgraceful if you look at the salary scale of civil servants, because you know that the greatest corruption takes place in the civil service on a daily basis. It is extremely heartbreaking to know that the minimum wage is still 18,000 naira. Right now, that is less than $50, I guess. Or about that. It's extremely disgraceful. And I understand that this is not an overnight thing that just happened yesterday. It has been a culmination of various policies over and over and over that we have seen over the years. Policies that do not encourage
hard work in the civil service, policies that encourage corruption in the civil service, because the authorities know that these civil servants are not depending on this income for survival. But they just deliberately close their eyes to it. Oh, successive governments know. So nobody has sat down to ask the hard questions. How do they survive beyond their salaries? Are they animals? We are treating our civil servants like animals. All governments, including this one, they have failed to just sit down to ask a very hard question. If you know that they are not surviving on it, then you know that corruption is going on. So it is just an unwritten policy to allow this corruption to go on, because that's the only way you can preserve the civil service. It's the only way you can preserve them. Preserve work. Preserve those who work for you.
Yeah, that's not the right way.
It's abnormal. It's abnormal. It's condemnable. So we must ask the hard questions. And I do not see that this government has addressed that issue. I do not see so. I do not see it. They'll be talking a lot about auditing here and there. Before you finish auditing, those who are working for you should not die now. Why you are auditing ghost people? The ones that are not ghosts before you now turn them to be ghosts overnight, the real ghosts overnight, let them survive. I support the NLC in their push to raise the minimum wage to at least 45,000. I support their push. I support that effort all the way, because we must give them, our civil servants, some life, some living wage. They must earn some kind of living wage.
You see this pop-up of corruption here and there. Is it not something that worries people like you?
Absolutely. It appears to me that the president is too slow to act on these issues. It also appears to me that the president may be a bit weak also when it comes to those who are close to him to take decisive actions. That is what it appears to me these particular cases are.
Okay, Mr. KEYAMO, let's look at the big thing today. It has become fashionable to talk about restructuring. Let me start by saying, when we talk about restructuring, what does it mean to you?
No,
or what do you think it should be?
The summary of restructuring, the summary of it is simply how to politically empower the different groups in this country, ethnic groups in this country and interests in this country. Give them political autonomy, give them political, empower them without, of course, making them economically unviable. As you are giving them political autonomy, they must also become economically viable. That is the summary of the whole argument regarding restructuring. So that there will be, let's say, push of centripetal and centrifugal. The whole argument is being centrifugal. Come out from the center. Center is too loaded. Center is too powerful. So there's the whole argument. One thread running through all the arguments. One thread, single thread, is to weaken the center in favor of federative.
Is restructuring restricted to political restructuring?
That is why I said weaken the center. Is that fiscal federalism? One thread, I said one thread running through. Fiscal federalism, take money from the center, give to the regions. State police, take police from the center, give to the regions. Political power, take from the center, give to the regions. The exclusive legislatives, concurrent list, reduce them, give to the states. Are you seeing all the arguments? All the arguments, one by one, it's all about taking from the center, whether political, fiscal federalism, state police, anything, and giving more powers to the regions. Now, I don't think we should be talking about the imperative of restructuring again. We have been doing this over and over and over, and I think there's some general consensus that there is an imperative for restructuring. What we should be talking about is the feasibility of restructuring. Because we can be so carried away with this, work ourselves up, without even looking at where we are going. How feasible is it? Let me tell you, how difficult we are, or the kind of difficult situation we find ourselves now, that people don't. Some people think that, oh, restructuring is just around the corner, just around the corner. Keep this thing. Preserve it. 10 years later, come back and play to me here, these same sports. We are going to talk about the same thing, it's not going to happen. With the present political and constitutional setup that we have.
How do we make it possible?
Let me tell you how difficult it is.
Tell me
there is no restructuring.
How we can do it.
Because I must tell you the impediments first.
Okay.
There is no restructuring that can take place now without having a brand new constitution. Because the whole thing is about the constitutional order of the country. So you must, to restructure, you must have a brand new constitution now. To have a brand new constitution now, there are only 3 avenues to have by which you can have a brand new constitution. 1, outright revolution that sweeps away the government. Popular revolution. And some kind of interim government like the one that happens in Egypt and all that, and a new constitution comes. We cannot fathom that. We cannot support that. There will be too much bloodshed. There will be too much chaos. We may not survive it. The second one is a military takeover. We have seen enough of it, and we have seen how the damage they have done to our democracy and damage they have done to our progress over the years. Because it ends up being the military people and their small coterie of friends that are the ones that made the oil billionaires all over Nigeria now. Give people oil blocks, oil as they like. Nobody can question them. We're all, sentenced to silence under the military. The third one is by constitutional review, which is what is permissible under the democratic setting we find ourselves today.
Using the National Assembly?
Using the National Assembly, which I'm going through section 9 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. No restructuring can take place now without section 9. Section 9 tells you the mode by which you want to amend the Constitution. Now, what is the mode? The Constitution clearly spells out how you can amend the Constitution. It must go to the National Assembly. The lure of those who go to the National Assembly today, the power, the lure of them, the attraction, is the enormous powers they wield. The enormous powers that they wield. Especially through their committee work, the oversight functions they wield. You have covered the National Assembly. You are close to, you know as well as I do, that the major perks of office and income of the legislators today come from the committee work. And the committees, the Senate has about 43 committees, the House of Reps have about 63 committees. The committees are empaneled in respect of those items under which they have powers to make laws, which is the exclusive list and the concurrent list. In other words, you cannot form committee over an issue you don't have power over. You cannot form committee, for example, over local government election, because local government election is not under the federal structure, it's under states. So that's the point I'm saying. You can there are powers, there are enormous powers by which they summon heads of agencies, summon this, they make committee. It's in respect of those items under the concurrent and legislative. That is the wide powers they have. So in summary, if you take the battle of restructuring to the National Assembly that have powers to change the Constitution, you are telling them to shed the very powers that they wield. You are telling them to remove the very lure of the office, the very lure, that the very things that lure them in the first place to contest for those offices. That's what you are telling them. It's not going to happen. That is why you see that all these constitutional amendments have been taking place. Have you seen them talk about devolution of power? From federal to state? No. All the constitutional amendments taking place since, under these joint committees headed by Kweri Madu and all of that, have talked about other issues like splitting the office of the AG. They have debated issues like local government autonomy and co. They have never touched their enormous power. There's those powers that they wield. They have not touched them. And that is exactly what we're talking about. There's also no provision for a referendum in the entire 1999 Constitution. There's no provision. So if you even hold a referendum today, it is unconstitutional. It is null and void. The referendum will have no force of law. Because you know why? You have to go back to the National Assembly with the referendum again. The result to say, now, please amend the Constitution with this result of the referendum. You have to put pressure on them. So you can see, that even the document that Jonathan got at the end of the day through his national conference, National Political Conference. That document ended up even before Buhari, it ended up a dead document in the hand of Jonathan. He could not do anything with it. It was just a political smoke screen. That's why some of us were shouting there that it was nothing but a fraud. It was because at the end of the day, people did not ask simple questions. How are you going to implement this decision?
So how do we get out of this quagmire?
It is to reform our electoral system. Let me tell you.
And get the right people?
And when you reform the electoral system, that your votes can count. When your votes can count and they know that the popular view is to reform, is to restructure, and they know that it's a campaign team, it will be a campaign team and they hold you alive, they will hold you accountable for your campaign promises, then they will sit up. As it is today, nobody depends on your votes. I'll tell you that. People do not depend on your votes. Majority of those elected, especially at those levels, they don't depend on the vote. So we need to go back. It's just like when you want to catch a monkey. You will do the first step, second step, third step before you know it's inside the trap. Let us first of all tell them to reform the electoral system in such a way that votes from the polling units, I'm not talking of the states, I'm not talking of even the local government, the polling units are transmitted automatically, electronically to a central system. The real problem of our election has been the collation of results. You know that? That has been the problem, the collation of results. If we can have that and have true a complete reformed electoral system, we can hold people accountable to their promises. Now, you see all politicians jumping on the train of restructuring. You see them? Let me warn you that not everybody shouting restructuring wants restructuring. People are just jumping on the train and jumping out at every bus stop at their convenience. Oh, restructuring, not restructuring. Once those people who are shouting restructuring are elected into office, you won't hear restruct in their mouths again.
Mr. FESTUS KEYAMO, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, speaking about some very germane issues in Nigeria today. Don't forget that for the full, unedited version of that interview, all you need to do is to go to our online portal at signaturetv.com.ng. We'll take a break. When we return, I'll share my thoughts with you. Like many Nigerians this past week, I've been thinking about the Obasanjo letter. And my position is that let's not concentrate on the messenger or the vehicle. Let's concentrate on the message. And what is the message? The message is that something needs to be done urgently to put Nigeria on a proper footing. Something has to be done urgently by President Buhari to continue to earn the trust that Nigerians reposed on him. Without where you come from, without which church you go to, without which mosque you attend, and look at issues concerning Nigeria without sentiments. The message is that Nigeria needs the best, and at this time of our development, that only the best should be occupying the position of President of Nigeria. It is high time Nigerians focus properly on those reasons, those issues that are making it impossible for Nigeria to develop its full potentials. Those are my thoughts. And that's how we bring to an end today's edition of the Signature Show. Don't forget that if there's any part of this program you've missed, all you need to do is to go to signaturetv.com.ng. If there are old programs that we have, broadcast that you missed and you want to see them again and again and again, do the same thing. Go to signaturetv.com.ng. Remember, you can reach us on our social media platforms. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're thinking about the Signature Show. Until we meet again, from Abuja in Nigeria, I am Vinmartin, Obiora, Ilo. Thanks for watching.